What's up, everybody? This is Trey Biddy with HawgSports.com coming to you from HawgSports Studio. Today on HawgSports Live, we're going to talk football, we'll talk basketball, we'll bring Danny West in, see what we can get out of him on recruiting, all that and more on HawgSports Live. Okay, we're going to have kind of a feedback-driven show, so I wanted you to go ahead and get your questions in, and we're going to answer a lot of that stuff. Plenty of ways to watch and listen. You can watch on Facebook Live, where we're always streaming live, usually on Tuesdays around 2:30, and Thursdays around 11. And then after games, of course, we do the walk and talk, and we also do any emergency podcasts we need to do in case there's breaking information. Immediately uploaded to YouTube right after. Be sure to follow on Facebook. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube and hit the notifications bell and share if you think somebody might like the content. Go ahead and throw us a thumbs up right now on both of those platforms if you like the content we deliver. Also available on Apple Podcasts. Right now, the #1 rated Razorback podcast with the most ratings also on Apple Podcasts. Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, just about anywhere you can think of to get your podcast. We're available on those platforms also. Last day, today is Monday. So it's the last day we're doing the 60% off. Did I say Tuesday earlier? Monday and Thursday is when we do the show. But today's the last day we do the 60% off offer. So that's 60% off an annual subscription at HawgSports.com with a 7-day free trial. So you can follow this coaching search, all the ins and outs of it, all the latest recruiting stuff. Most of it's decommitment stuff right now, but there's a lot of basketball stuff going on. But join in our community, see what you're missing for 60% off, or you can sign up for $1 for your first month right now at HawgSports.com, HawgSports.com. As I mentioned, Danny West is going to join us here in a little bit. I want you guys to go ahead and get your questions in, and we're going to answer some of those things. Just a few things here and there. Arkansas playing LSU this weekend, 46-point underdog. Joe Burrow right now has got my Heisman vote, my #1 spot Heisman vote. Right now, I'm going to wait till the season plays out, but if I were casting my vote today, I would give it to Joe Burrow. LSU is a very complete team. It's not a surprise that they're a 46-point favorite. How's Arkansas going to respond with this coaching staff, lame duck coaching staff? You know, I'm obviously big Barry Lunny guy, so I'm hoping Barry does well. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't just kind of like, let's get this season over with, get this coaching search underway, and let's start moving forward. And the players hopefully don't have the same attitude that I have. And, this weekend was kind of weird for me because I didn't watch a lot of football this weekend. It was a bye week, but I had my nephew's 2-year-old birthday party early Saturday, and then some good friends of ours were getting married Saturday night, which you get a lot of those in a bye week in Little Rock, so I was traveling a lot. So really just, Georgia-Auburn, and not a whole lot of football did I get to take in. Didn't get to watch the basketball game either. Although I tell you what I'm impressed with the basketball team, nobody's scoring 50 points on them so far. They have been stout on defense. I mean, I'm just able to look at the box score, but obviously Mason Jones with another solid night. Adrio Bailey, 12 points, 11 rebounds. I think Adrio is really, really having his best season so far. Let's see if he keeps that up. But so far, Adrio, just numbers-wise, again, I wasn't able to watch the game, unfortunately, but Adrio's playing well early this season. So, anyway, Eric Musselman spoke today. Barry Lunny spoke today. And actually, none of the coordinators come in. So, John Chavis didn't come in, and Joe Craddock didn't come in, which I guess is a first for those guys. So, that was a little different than what we're used to, I guess. I wouldn't expect to see Chavis in there again, I guess, or Joe Craddock. No player availability this week. So, technically, Barry Lunny's become the most closed-off head coach in Arkansas football history, which has happened with each subsequent head coach. But, I get the situation that they're in right now. Now, we'll have post-game media availability in Baton Rouge. Again, not expecting that to go too well. It's going to be very difficult for these players, and Barry says some great stuff. And, one of my favorite things that he was talking about was just how you look at this game, not as a you don't have much to lose, but you have everything to gain. And just by looking at it with a different attitude changes the way you practice, changes the way you prepare. I want to see if Barry rallies these guys around because they're definitely fragmented. I don't think there's any question that this is a team that's just divided, whether it's players against players or classifications against classifications or offense versus defense or players not liking their coach, coaches not liking their players. All kinds of stuff. You hear all kinds of stuff like this behind the scenes. So can he rally these guys around for a common goal to finish this thing out strong? Jumpstart things for the young guys. Those are the questions right now. 46-point underdog. It would be the biggest upset. I think Kyle Deckelbaum had that. It'd be the biggest upset ever in terms of point spread. Yeah, but Adrio Bailey, 11 points. Basketball team beating Montana, 64-46. Texas Southern on Tuesday. Another game Friday against South Dakota State. And then Georgia Tech on Monday in Atlanta. That's the first Power 5 level type of opponent. So November 25th at Georgia Tech. The thing that stinks about this basketball schedule is, there's some okay teams on here. Tulsa, Western Kentucky, Valpo, some notable names and stuff like that. Some names you remember. Valpo's in Little Rock. Indiana's in Bloomington. So out of all the non-conference games, you don't have any major Power 5 home games on this basketball schedule. Your first one is Texas A&M on January 4th when you start SEC play, 6 o'clock game. I want to remind everybody one more time, take advantage of this 60% off promo. I think you'd be glad you did. We've had, in the thousands, people take advantage of that deal. Of the last 2 deals. We ran a couple of different promos. And I'm not saying it'll be the last one, but it'll probably be the last one for a little bit that we run. 417 people on here. Tell me Arkansas fans aren't passionate. Do you think Hunter Yurachek has talked to the players about what they may want in a coach? I don't think that Hunter's going to take that angle. I think he's experienced enough, through doing coaching searches in the past. And I want people to comment on, who do you want to see as the head coach at Arkansas? And I know there's some common names like Lane Kiffin and Mike Leach and Mike Norvell, Matt Campbell, Matt Rule. Maybe some of those names are even a little bit of a long shot. Bill Clark is another guy that people bring up. Billy Napier. Who do you guys want to see as a coach? Is there a name outside the box? Now, I'm not going to go into stuff we're hearing behind the scenes on the coaching search. You can sign up at HawgSports.com if you want to get that in-depth stuff, but we're going to talk more casually about it. We have had some pretty interesting recent updates, but I will say for most people, looking for some major scoop right now at this point, there's going to be stuff that comes out. But right now at this point, what I can tell you from my inside sources is that it is just very early in this process. It's very early. It's an exploratory type of time for this process. Bobby Swain says, didn't Kiffin get fired and when he was taken off the team plane? Yeah, I'd go get that guy, Mr. Mediocre, says Bobby Swain. So the thing with Kiffin, first of all, that was how long ago was that? 10 years ago? Maybe 8 years ago. When he left Tennessee for the USC job, they'd won 7 games at Tennessee, and he kind of left overnight. He's a very young guy. He was the head coach of the Raiders when he was 31, was disgruntled there, went to Tennessee, liked Tennessee, didn't want to leave, but he felt like he was leaving a top 15 job for the number 1 job in the country, and then they got hammered a lot more than I think what anybody expected, or at least what he expected from the NCAA. They won 10 games his second year there. So they got off to a good start, but then they just kind of slid and he got fired midseason next year. And then, of course, spent some time with Nick Saban as the offensive coordinator, 3 years there. And then went to FAU, won 11 games, dipped last year, and they're back on track again this year. So, I'm not the same person I was when I was 31 years old. I'm sure most of you guys aren't, who are older than 31 anyway. But I'm not the same person I was. I would think I'm more responsible, more knowledgeable, wiser, and that's probably true in the case of Lane Kiffin. He has probably had plenty of learning experiences, probably was thrust into the fire a little bit too early, even with Michael Lombardi saying, initially, he wasn't even the main guy that they were interviewing for the Raiders. He came along as an offensive coordinator. And I think he said Sarkisian was the guy they were looking at, I think. Anyway, but they were just like, hey, let's go with the coordinator, basically. So that's kind of where Kiffin got started. But he was just 31 years old. That's extremely young to be a head coach. I will say this about Kiffin. He's a household name. Everybody knows who Lane Kiffin is. And the same thing with Mike Leach. Everybody knows who Mike Leach is. Anybody who follows college football knows who Mike Leach is. Now, I think people have their hesitations with both of those guys, but do you think they would get Arkansas out of the cellar, get them back competitive again? I kind of think they would. I think it's very important with this hire to get a guy that's going to pull you out and get you competitive again. Let's not even have these conversations about getting to championship level just yet. Let's talk about getting out of this hole that Arkansas is in. I think these guys could possibly be the ones that do it. I think they could. That could be the case with Mike Norvell also. I think with Mike Norvell, he's never really built a program, and that's probably true with Kiffin too. He hasn't really built a program. I think what you get with Kiffin is the name. There's a lot of experience. He's got a pretty big web of people he knows and hires. There's all kinds of stuff about the people he could bring with him, and Lance Thompson, and there's even Keith laid out an avenue to get Sam Pittman through getting Lane Kiffin. So James DeMont says, "Who am I wanting? Who do I want? I haven't nailed that down, to be honest. I would say, okay, I'll say this. If you take everything and cast it aside and say you can have this guy, this guy, this guy, because I think Matt Rule is a long shot in terms of how much he costs. But when you look at what he did at Temple and you look at what he did at Baylor, I just think it's very impressive. I mean, you have got to have some stones to go into Baylor with the situation that they were in and take that job. You really do. And they went at 1-11 this first year, and they just lost their first game, but they've had a fantastic season so far. And this was a program that we were talking about, is Baylor going to get the death penalty? I think the same lines with Matt Campbell. At Toledo, they've been a good program there, but he definitely kept it going and has done some really good things at Iowa State, which is a program that I think is kind of capped. I think they have a ceiling at Iowa State. So those two guys obviously jump out big to me. Now, there are some other guys that just haven't been discussed. I mean, we can talk about, guys that aren't coming here for sure. But, I mean, even those guys might be considered long shots. Real interested to see how this plays out. Kiffin was involved before when Hunter Yurachek was at Houston. There was even a leak that he was the hire. So he's definitely been involved with Hunter Yurachek before. Brad Hodges says Bill Clark, he began from virtually scratch and has UAB competitive really quickly. UAB is another great example. Brad Hodges, when you talk about coaches who built programs up, I definitely think he's in the mix. I mean, they quit playing football for a couple of years. I mean, they're a formidable program on that level. Dalton Adams says if Eli Drinkwitz had more experience, I'd definitely be all over him. I think you're right, Dalton. I mean, he's from this area. Makes a lot of sense with the offense that he runs. But the experience angle, definitely. Jacob Hicks says, Trey, do you believe Gus is really going to come if you lose to Alabama? Paul said he needs to leave this morning. Here's the deal. If Arkansas hires him away from Auburn, then Auburn doesn't have to pay him $27 million. In fact, he'd owe them $7 million, even though some people would say they just let him walk. I mean, in a way, I think that Auburn, I understand the frustration when you feel like you've been stuck at a level for a long time, but at the same time, I've seen schools try to make coaching changes and not appreciate what they have, trying to take a step above, and they end up taking massive steps back. And that's always a possibility when you have a change, unless you go out and buy you a guy who is a guarantee. And I know guys like Stoops have been, that name's been tossed around and stuff too. But, I mean, so far Malzahn has lost 3 games, right? They've lost to top 10 Florida, top 10 LSU, and top 10 Georgia. Those are the 3 games that they've lost. And 2 of those were on the road. And they lost to Georgia by 7 at home. And now they've got Alabama coming up, and I think a lot of people are just kind of chalking that up to a loss. It might not be without Tua in there. Which, man, you got to feel for Tua Tagovailoa. That's a tough one. Hate to see a season, a college career end like that. I guess I haven't thought about, but man, certainly feel for him. Never want to see anybody get injured like that. Bobby Swain says, I bet Bobby P is a changed man. Probably not, Bobby. By the way, Bobby Swain, when I was doing my walk and talk the other day, and I said I was recording the Auburn game And I didn't want to know the score. I saw you post on the – you're not my friend, Bobby Swain. I saw what you did. You posted the score up there trying to get me to see it, even though you knew I was recording the game. I see you. Matt Milligan says, I'd take Matt Rule. Actually, guys, before I jump into more of these questions, I do want to bring in Danny. I told him I'd bring him in pretty early. Again, there's not going to be like a wealth of recruiting information, but he has some interesting articles up just about like kind of the timeline to expect last time. Last time there was only 2 decommitments before Chad Morris was hired, and then they started dropping off after that. This year it's been a lot different. There's been a lot more early decommitments than what we've seen in the past. So let's bring Danny on, see what he's got to say.
Trey Biddy.
Daniel West, how you doing, brother?
What's happening, man? Just enjoying for the storm and football recruiting.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of –
tell me who the coach is going to be.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of telling everybody. And, in a way, Danny, I don't want to say like football season is over for me, but the interest level for me has gone down quite significantly just because, you want to move on, but you got a couple of games left to play, and I hope for the seniors that things turn around and Barry Lundy rallies around. They maybe play their best game on Saturday. Nobody's expecting to win, but who knows what can happen at Missouri or against Missouri in Little Rock? Because with Missouri, that is literally their bowl game. They're going down to Little Rock. The weather could be crappy. We saw what Arkansas did last year when they were completely out of it. Crappy weather. They didn't want to be there. Totally let go of the rope. So Missouri could kind of be in that situation too, heading into Little Rock, and you never know what might happen.
So you're totally writing off the chances of a win this weekend? Is that what I'm gathering here?
You've gathered that correctly.
Well, I'll tell you, there's been times in this Arkansas-LSU series where Arkansas, for no reason whatsoever, went out there and made it a game or even beat LSU. That's not going to happen this weekend, Trey.
No.
Not at all.
No, it's not.
It's not going to happen. I do hope they play hard for Coach Lundy, man. He deserves it, and I do think we'll see a team that plays much harder than we've been seeing. And at this point, it's really all you can ask, right?
Yeah, it's about all you can ask right now. And for Lundy, I think obviously he's a strong candidate to stick around. You never know what the new coach is going to bring, but Lundy has, the special teams weren't bad this year. Now it's everybody's, when I say that, everybody's like fake punt. But overall, special teams weren't bad this year, especially compared to last year since Lundy has taken over. So that's an angle that he has. Being from Arkansas, playing at Arkansas, you never know. Like you hire a coach like kind of like what they did with Brett Bielema last time, hiring a guy that's an outsider. You need a guy like that who knows what works in your program. I also think Barry can bring a lot. It's like, hey, this is what we were doing in recruiting, and it was really working. Because I would like to see them carry over some of that stuff.
You would hope for some carryover. but you think about his position, Trey. It's not like he's coached bad tight ends here. He's had really, really good tight ends. So that in and of itself makes him a quality carryover candidate, in my opinion.
He does not have a bad track record. It was kind of like, Tim Horton. He just spent a year under Houston Nutt in transition, but, he's able to say, hey, look what we did with Darren McFadden and Felix Jones.
That's right.
So Danny, you had an interesting article. It's VIP story on HawgSports.com. Again, 60% off for your first year if you want to sign up with that, and it comes with a 7-day free trial. If you want to read Danny's stuff, then it is mostly VIP information. Of course, a lot of our VIP content is on this coaching search. We post all that kind of information on the Razor's Edge, our premium community that we certainly care a lot about. But when recruiting, when this coach is hired, probably sometime around, what do you think, Danny? December. What's the date? What's the
ideal date?
Yeah.
The ideal date from a recruiting standpoint would be somewhere around the 1st of December. And I say that because
we're talking like in a normal situation where the regular season ends, right?
Yeah. December 1 is when coaches can go out and start doing in-home visits, and then you roll into a month-long dead period on December 16th. So you're talking about 2 weeks there. It's really, really important. I don't like these numbers being thrown around like December 8th, 9th, 10th.
Yeah.
I think you're really putting yourself behind the 8 ball there. So, when you start a coaching search on November 10th, you would think you're ahead enough that maybe you got a head start and you could go out and make that December 1, December 2nd, somewhere in there. I think it's probably best case scenario. I mean, and you look at some of the candidates on your board right now, Trey. I won't list them because it's VIP stuff, but I'm sure you've talked about them already. But some of those guys are still going to be playing in conference championship games, and that would be what, the 7th, 8th?
Yep. Absolutely
now,
right.
Granted, you want to make sure you're getting the best guy, the right guy, but man, I'm telling you, that early signing period has changed the game.
Yep.
And you think about it, it's only been around for 3 years, Trey, and it's horrible for teams in transition.
Yep.
And Arkansas now, in 2 of the first 3 years, has been in transition for that early signing period. That's really, really tough.
It is not a good thing for teams in transition. Well, I mean, it's everybody's in transition, aren't they, Danny? I mean, it may not be your head coach, but your assistant coaches. I mean, think about how many players every year sign with a school. They love their lead recruiter, they love their assistant coaches, or the combination of that, and then soon after signing day, because that's coaching change season too. I mean, that's when new staffs are formed, coaches leave, so you think you're playing for a guy and you're not suddenly. It happened with Luke Jones when he signed with Notre Dame. Remember, his offensive line coach bolted right after that. So I'm not a big fan of the early signing period. I think there needs to be something. I don't know. At this point, the way I see it play out, I just don't know because people can say, well, I just don't like it because Arkansas is in transition, but every school every year is in a transition, and I don't feel like it. Yeah. I feel like it's supposed to be something good for the student athlete, but I really feel like it's geared towards coaches, so the coaches don't have to, as Brett said, babysit the recruit, when they've been committed
for
forever.
The last month and a half.
But there are so many things like that I don't think are of the benefit of the student athlete. I don't necessarily think this is benefiting student athletes, moving everything forward like this. I think that's kind of what's bearing out. I've given my talk about limiting when they can issue scholarships to recruits and stuff like that. I don't think that's fair for coaches to be able to say, hey, you got a scholarship offer, but not really, Anyway, so Danny, I thought it was interesting on your timeline with Brett, there were just 2 decommitments until Chad Morris was hired on December 6th. And this we've seen a lot different where, recruits are just jumping off more rapidly. Yeah,
this time around, which I think you had more commitments this time around too. But, they were more spaced out. They ended up getting the same total as what Arkansas has right now in decommitments, 8, I believe. Now, one of those was for the next class, 2019. Ty Evans was a quarterback that committed super early.
Right.
So a little bit different there. But, you had some guys on into late December still decommitting, kind of riding the fence after Chad Morris took over here when, as you said there, this time around it was, right off the top, like first 3 days you get eight dudes leaving you. So a little bit different this time around, but at the same time, you expected that, right? A lot of out-of-state kids this time around, a lot of Texas kids with Texas schools still coming after them. Yeah, I'm not surprised by the total that, it is what it is at this point.
Danny
West. Still got 6.
Yeah, Danny West joining. Is it down to 6? Is that right? I haven't looked at it in a little bit.
6 guys right now.
Yeah. Well, that's just kind of happened. The way it's happened really in a lot of recent coaching changes, I guess, is all the guys that are out of state will decommit, right?
Sure.
And the in-state, have all the in-state guys stayed committed so far?
All three. Catrell Wallace, Blaine Toll, and Jashad Stewart. And then your out-of-state guys are Mike Harris, and then a couple of teammates from out in Knoxville West, and Drew Francis and Tyrese Edwards. A couple of guys, frankly, Trey, I'm not sure how many other teams are still knocking down their door, so no surprise really that they're staying on at this point.
Right. So, but usually the way it goes, if you've got any like midterm junior college players, the new coach usually keeps those guys committed because, they're kind of running into a difficult situation. The in-state guys usually, keep trying to keep those guys on board, and then out of state, it's usually a completely different group of commitments. That's the way it's happened recently, anyway.
And, there's still a chance, Trey. We talked about Coach Lunny, the possibility of him sticking around. If he does, and I think he's, as you said, he's going to have a really good chance. I wouldn't completely write it off for Brandon Frazier or Alan Horace. And the same could be said for Justin Stepp and Jeff Traylor. Now, I'm not sitting here saying what's going to happen, which staff members will be kept, but those seem to be the 3 most popular guys, right?
Well,
the 3 most well-known in terms of the amount of commitments they've brought in.
One of my first questions is going to be to the potential coaches is, can you recruit? And you look at what Traylor's like. If Traylor can say, "Hey, I can get Garrett Hayes here. I can get Takias Crawford here," you almost have to. You almost have to say, okay, because those are difference maker types on the offensive line, and that's an area where you've struggled. With Justin Stepp, when you say, these are the wide receivers that I brought in here. These are, very well regarded players. I just think that makes sense. And then Lunny, with his connections in Arkansas, his history coaching tight ends, he's had some good ones come through here. And
he is.
And he's had a couple of good ones on board. Do you think the same could be true with Alan Horace, Danny?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a lot of guys. Savion Williams, I think, probably would still come. Mason Mangum. Now I'm saying if Justin Stepp was still here, I think you still get Savion. I think you get Mason. And I think you probably still get Connor O'Toole, a four-star kid who hasn't even committed to Arkansas, but I think your chances were drastically on the rise with him prior to all of this going down. And then with Jeff Traylor, I think John Gentry would still have a chance of coming back around. You mentioned Garrett Hayes. You mentioned Takias Crawford. You're talking about like 5-6 dudes right there that could double this class in a hurry if they're able to stick around.
It's not going to work out where
there's a lot of ifs there.
Yeah, it's not going to work out where they keep all of them. I think Jeff Traylor will land on his feet somewhere at a notable program probably. And Stepp may too. Stepp's young, but he may too. But definitely has some recruiting prowess. So we'll see how things shake out, I guess. But, hey, I'll say this, while we're on the topic, a guy like Cody Vincent in the graphics department.
Absolutely.
I mean, when you talk about the things that Chad Morris has done right in his time at Arkansas, outlining that footprint of Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, Memphis area, Nashville, those areas for their footprint in recruiting, the graphics department, their strategy of just basically putting everything on the board that they think of and picking it apart, deciding if it's a dumb idea later. But the way they marketed themselves to recruits, I think, has been fantastic. The way they've stayed out in front in recruiting. I mean, that was something that we always said when they were doing this. Is like, man, if things don't work out with Chad, I don't know who it might work out for, because they got it in recruiting like no other staff that we've covered at Arkansas. They just did. But for whatever reason, man, on the field and with the current players, Chad just he couldn't turn them. He just couldn't, and not just couldn't turn them, but did a worse job than anyone else in the 126-year history of the program, which I don't think anybody expected to be quite that bad.
It's tough to do, man. That's tough to do, and we talked about Chad just there, but I think he's going to be another guy that lands on his feet in just a matter of time. Some major school. I've been made aware of a couple that have reached out to him all day. I'm not going to put coach's business out there because those schools still have their current coordinators in place, but he will have opportunities. As you talked about there, the coaching transition period is coming up.
We're talking about P5 schools, Danny?
Yeah. Big-time schools, big-name schools. He's going to be fine.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's good. I mean, he was obviously known – he probably should have done, looking back, maybe taking those reins a little bit firmer on offensive coordinator.
I agree with that.
And I don't mean to slight Joe Craddock. Joe Craddock's done some good things in recruiting too, but just didn't jive up for whatever reason. There's a lot of reasons. I mean, we hear things behind the scenes why things didn't jive up there. But moving on, like I said, I mean, I'm anxious to see. I'm more interested in seeing. Like I've activated coach search mode, So I'm interested. I changed my Twitter profile to the Shades, just like I had last time, and
Dude,
I'm activated.
I'm getting killed by people hitting me up wanting coaching news. I'm like, ask Trey Biddy. Sign up on HawgSports. It's a great time to be there. Yeah. Go ask Trey. I'm letting him handle that. As soon as he hands it over to me with recruiting, a coach gets in here, you can ask me about all the recruits you want. But right now, you're the coaching search guy. Yeah,
I mean, that's like I said, 60% off right now for your first year. We'll probably do something a little later, but it's probably – and this This ends today, Danny. 11:59 p.m. tonight. 60% off at HawgSports.com. And, that's it. Ends today. 11:59. No promo code or anything. Just sign up for the yearly. Get the deal. Or you can sign up for a month. Take $1 off.
It's pretty easy.
What do you think about this basketball program, Danny?
Yeah, I was just looking at some basketball recruiting notes I wanted to jump into, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously disappointing news since we last spoke with Chris Moore choosing Auburn.
Yeah, that was a late switch, Trey. I think Arkansas felt really good last
Yeah.
Wednesday, Thursday. But then sometime around Friday, I want to say, it really shifted
The old late
drastically.
switch.
Yeah, the old late switch, man.
Yeah.
We've seen it before, but hey, I'll tell you what, I still think they've got a really good shot of getting 4 of the 5 guys. Of course, you've already got Devo Davis. He's supposed to sign tomorrow and make that official, matter of fact. You got Moses Moody. He's going to sign in the spring signing period. You would rather him sign early, but I think he's pretty firm at this point. So then you're talking about Jalen Williams. He's got his announcement coming up this Saturday. Still like Arkansas. And then KK Robinson on Thanksgiving Day. That's another big one. So I think Arkansas and Coach Muss, they've got a real chance here to come away with 4 of those 5 guys. I'm just going to tell you, man, I don't think that would have happened under Mike Anderson. I don't think that would have ever happened.
Yeah.
So, hey, you'll take that all day. And maybe you keep a spot. Maybe Musselman's a guy that he can use that transfer portal like anybody, better than anybody in the country so far. So wouldn't surprise me if they keep a spot.
Who's committing on Thanksgiving again?
KK Robinson.
KK, you love the holiday commitment.
Oh, man, I've seen quite a few. It seems like every holiday and always on my birthday. 2 years in a row on my birthday. But that's okay. They've gotten a couple of really good players out of Memphis the last couple of years. Or they had them.
It just always, I mean, I get it. It's about the kids, and it's about their commitment. But as a recruiting writer, and I've been there too when I was covering recruiting more, but like, you get somebody and they're like, I'm committing on Christmas Day, and you're like, so I'm working Christmas. Right. Or I'm committing 4th of July. All right, not having any beers today. Not going to the lake today, I guess.
Yeah.
That just happens.
We make up for it, though. We get plenty of July 5ths are always fun in my place.
July 5th. I hear you. All right, Danny, anything else you want to add before I let you go?
Buddy. It'll heat up here in a few weeks when they get a coach, and I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be crazy, but that's what makes it fun.
Oh yeah, they hit. I remember last time with Chad, it was like he came and did his press conference.
We didn't sleep for 3 weeks after he got here.
Yeah,
it was nuts.
Well, that's because they were active like we'd never seen in recruiting, like we were saying. But the next day he was down in watching Traylon Burks play. Right after that.
Yeah, probably a good call on his part.
Yeah, that's the guy you want to go see. Absolutely.
I think he's pretty decent.
And Hudson, I believe, also, which I saw. I saw his dad. I saw Mark Henry and Jenny Henry this weekend at that wedding I was at.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good people.
Yeah, it was a good wedding. It was a lot of Razorbacks. John David was there, White. He's he's John Aaron Reese's nephew, and John Reese, who played on the '64 team, his grandson. So
let me tell you, John David White I'll tell you a quick story, Trey. A few weeks ago after a home game, I forget if it was Mississippi State or Western Kentucky, I was walking past, I left the stadium, went past the players' parking lot, saw JD out there. I said, hey, man, can you play defense by any chance? And he said, Mr. Danny, I trust my guys. And I walked away. I was like, that is the perfect answer. That's a teammate answer. But come on now. Yeah. It was like 45 points that day. I was like, hey, just give it a shot, please. Let's see what you can do, man. He's a great kid.
All those white boys are white boys.
Come on now.
All those white guys, whatever, the whites, are pretty athletic. There's like 4 of them. And they were all on the dance floor.
Out there, huh, Trey?
Yeah, they were doing backflips and stuff on the dance floor and stuff. It was pretty good. Pretty good athletes.
I'm sorry I brought up my J.D. White story now. My God.
Yeah. All right, we'll let you go on that, Danny.
Buddy.
All right,
we'll
man.
See you, man.
All right, later. All right, that's Danny West. Danny does a great job for us. Again, HawgSports.com if you want to read his inside recruiting information. Definitely keeps you up with what's going around and also has a lot of good inside sources when it comes to Razorbacks. Not just a one-trick pony. To do this job, you kind of got to be a multi-tool type of guy. So Danny does a great job for us. Been with us for 10 years, I guess, Danny West. So be sure to follow his stuff. 60% off right now. All right, let's jump into a couple of comments and questions. Vince Oliver says, how about Gary Patterson from TCU? Now, I think this is interesting because Gary Patterson, people brought him up back in 2012 when Bielema was being hired for the 2013 season. And I remember Razorback fans being like, no, what is he, 7-6? No. I mean, the guy had won like average season. I think he had a bad season after that, but the next year he was like 11-2 again. So I think it's interesting that you bring up Gary Patterson, because we did talk about him so much with the Bielema hire. But I do remember people being like, and I would ask that same question, like with a guy like Mike Leach, who's 5-5 this season. Are people going to look at that record this year and not look at the 11-win record he had before, how much he's overachieved at Washington State? People have said, why would Mike Leach leave Washington State? It was one of the comments, I think, on my last video. And the bottom line is, and this is not a slight against Washington State, okay? I have plenty of respect for that program. But when you talk about the facilities, amenities, the support, and all of that stuff, it's just bigger at Arkansas. It's a better conference overall in the SEC. Now, Arkansas hasn't been as good a program as Washington State has recently. That's obvious. But when you talk about facilities, Washington State has a 31,000-seat stadium. Arkansas has a 76,000-seat stadium. I mean, the money they spend. Arkansas spends more money on food. Stumbling over my words today. Arkansas spends more money on food than any other team in the country. More money on food than anybody else. That's crazy to me. But, I mean, that's a lot of the things. The appeal of playing in the SEC. Okay, don't underestimate that. Coaches want to play at the highest level. They want to compete at the highest level. Everything that Arkansas has to offer. And I mentioned this last week, but Arkansas, there's nothing really left. I mean, over the years, you're going to facelist some stuff, maybe expand some stuff out. But I mean, everything is there, from the Student Athlete Success Center, from the Willard and Pat Walker Pavilion, from the Fred W. Smith Center, to the completed stadium. I mean, that stadium is complete. I don't know what else they're really going to add to that stadium. I mean, aside from, just renovating and dressing up over the years. Everything else that's in the north end zone, the locker rooms, I mean, there's literally nothing I can think of that Arkansas needs. Maybe expand the Willard and Pat Walker Pavilion so it's not just like 10 yards in the end zone and then a wall so you can practice some end zone stuff. Maybe that. But that's about all I could possibly think of that you would do. So whoever comes in here as a coach, everything's set up for you. It's set up for you to win. You might have to reach a little bit further in recruiting, but that's about it. Chad's offensive overcomplicated. It's not overcomplicated. Bielema's offense is way more complicated, or the Dan Enos or the Jim Chaney, whichever one I call it. But no, Chad's offense is incredibly simple. Spread offenses are generally way more simple than pro-style offenses. They just are. It's like with spreads, a lot of it's just like you make one quick decision based on like a conflict defender, or you're going to do something to get a guy open. You really have to read defenses and understand coverages to use a pro-style offense. Will Allen says, past 5 years with Leach, they are 41-20. I think you'd take that, Will. I know you would. Joey Gilmore says, worst coach to ever step on the hill. Yeah, and that's saying something. But yeah, he was the worst. Chad was the worst coach that Arkansas has ever had. I mean, and it's crazy because he did, like, again, so many good things off field when it came to. Now, he didn't do very well in front of the camera. It's almost like he was doing, even the simplest question, it's almost like he was doing whatever he could not to answer the question. Rick Davis says the only person that knows anything about the coaching search is the AD. I would disagree, Rick. I would disagree with that. I mean, a lot of stuff came out with the Musselman hire. You got to understand they're going to keep things locked down pretty good on the Arkansas side of things, but things leak out from other places. And like I said before, I mean, I know Hunter Yurachek wasn't at Arkansas, but we were guiding you along with the Chad Morris hire every step of the way, all the way up to the point where I broke the news a day and a half before it was public. So, and the same thing happened, with Eric Musselman. I don't know that it was just like broken Eric Musselman as the hire, but it was like all roads point to Eric Musselman. That was the theme the last week of that coaching search. And all that stuff that came out about, I said Kevin Sumlin. I keep doing that with Kelvin Sampson. And they both coached at Houston at one point, and they have the same initials, so it threw me off a little bit. But yeah, Kelvin Sampson, not Kevin Sumlin. I said that last week. You do a 45-minute show and don't make a mistake. Jonathan Parker says, Josh McDaniels from the Patriots, what are your thoughts on him? Yeah, it's possible. He had a brief stint as a head coach. I think he was with Cleveland, and that's been a while. But maybe somebody to consider. I really think they need a proven program builder. That's what I think they need. Not somebody who's like just taking over. And you might say that cancels out Mike Norvell, and I don't know if it necessarily should, because there's something to be said for keeping something rolling too. But I would like to see Arkansas really bring in a guy who is experienced, a veteran coach who has built a program up from the bottom before. And I think that might just be a situation, if you're Arkansas, where you have to buy yourself out of this with a proven coach versus going out and getting a guy that you take a little bit of a risk with, like Chad Morris. Brian Husky says, Marcus Brown, I don't know what to think about the Hogs right now. I know they've had a few decommitments, but they've got enough freshmen to be good as long as they get the right coach. You got to string together. That was one of the things that stunk about leaving Chad, or I guess really with Chad performing the way he did, because Arkansas didn't have any choice. I firmly believe that. But you really needed to stick another really solid recruiting class behind this last one that they had. And, it's going to be difficult. Now, depending on how things shake out with who's retained off this current staff, maybe you salvage some guys, ended up putting a good class together. But it just makes it difficult with that short window. Like I think about Brett Bielema's first year at Arkansas. His best class was really that first one. They had time to put it together when they get Denver Kirkland, Dan Skipper, Alex Collins. I mean, there were some studs in that class. And they had plenty of time to put it together. With Chad, he didn't really have that time. I mean, they got some good players that first year they squeezed in, but really the first real class of his was the next group, the 2019 class that are all freshmen right now. Got my Silly Putty. Big fan of Silly Putty. Good thing to squeeze. You can buy these giant eggs like this now. That's pretty good. All right, everybody. What else we got on here? Nepo Harv says Lane Kiffin sucks. Brandon Kelly says he'd be a great DC. A lot of comments. We've gone 42 minutes. I think we've had a pretty good show today. Had some nice information. Terry P. Roy says Sumlin Strong can recruit better players. Tim Allen says, what about Urban Meyer? I mean, what about Vince Lombardi? When are they going to fire Chavis? All those guys will be pretty much given their papers, I guess, day after the Missouri game, or right after, I guess. And then we'll see with some other guys, but Chavis isn't sticking around. I mean, Chavis hasn't done anything at Arkansas to warrant sticking around. And I've said before, I completely respect the 42-year coaching career he's had, 30-plus years as a coordinator. But, man, he has not been worth $1.5 million. He's done a bad job. He's done a bad job at Arkansas. And I don't know if it's because he's never really had to deal with that kind of talent or building up something on defense, but the guys just didn't buy in. I mean, they're horrendous on defense, and he hasn't done anything in recruiting. I mean, I hate to just say it like that, but, man, I mean, I don't know if he could have done a worse job. And I know he's got more football knowledge than I'll ever have, but you wouldn't know it. It's true. All right, everybody, we're going to wrap it up here. Again, plenty of ways to watch and listen. First of all, sign up for this 60% off. I can never get it because it's backwards. 60% off offer. That's off an annual VIP membership at HawgSports.com, HAWG sports.com. 7-day free trial. There's no promo code. You just sign up for the annual subscription and you get the deal. 60% off. Or you can sign up for a month and it's just $1. So 1 month for $1 or 60% off with an annual subscription and a 7-day free trial at HAWGsports.com. Come see what we got cooking on the Razor's Edge Premium Forum. If you like what we do with this show, you like the walk and talk, you like what we do with Drive Time, Out of Bounds, everywhere else, all the free stuff we do all of that stuff to get the message out about the website. That's our baby. That's where our main source of income is. So if you like everything else, then come over and support us on HawgSports.com and do that right now after this show is over. Always available on Facebook Live and YouTube. Be sure to throw us a thumbs up on both of those platforms. If you like the content that we're doing, share it with somebody else if you think they might like it. Be sure to follow the channel on Facebook Live and on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and hit the notifications bell so you're notified anytime we upload a new video. Also available on Apple Podcasts, the #1 rated and reviewed Razorback show on Apple Podcasts right now. Throw us a 5-star review and say something nice if you like the content. Also available on Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, anywhere you can think of just about to get your favorite podcast. We're going to get the pictures back up over here. There it is. I just haven't had a moment to do it. We were traveling a lot, and I've been focused on this coaching search, but we'll get this thing updated a little more to the times that are current. So I want to thank Danny West for joining us. I want to thank all of you for your questions. Thanks for making this so popular. This has been Trey Biddy with HawgSports.com, and we'll catch you next time.